Welcome to another episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty Show. Weekly, every week, coming out. It is Wednesday. This is a pre-recorded show. It used to be live, but I'll let you know right now if you have any comments, you can put them in and I'll bring them in next week for our next week's episode. So every week, one episode, and I will bring in your comments and we'll do a question and answer at the end of every episode starting next week. So if you have any questions about this particular topic, UFC Coach reacts to Vale Tudo, or anything that comes up in our conversation, put it in the comments. I'll be looking at that and I'll bring in your questions next week. Thank you for that. So without further ado, UFC Coach reacts to Vale Tudo. We'll talk about what it is first, but let's get John's reaction. UFC Coach John Hackleman, the man, the pit master. The reason it's called the Pit Combo. The Pit Online Dojo for our YouTube channel here. Let's go ahead and turn over to the video. Before we start, this video is of Rickson Gracie fighting in one of his first fights in Vale Tudo years ago against a guy known as, let's see here. It was a kind of an unknown fight for most people. And let me see here, before I make sure I got my history right. His first fight was against a guy named Zulu. So this is a guy named Zulu. It was in Brazil. A little context before they start, because the video is very, very old. This is Vale Tudo. The rules are there is no time limit. Stomping is allowed. The referee will not stand you up. There are no gloves. They are fighting barefisted. And anything else I want to add? Supposedly, there's only no eye poking and no biting allowed. However, Rickson claims that in the middle of this fight later, which I don't know if we have footage of, that the guy tried to eye gouge him. He tried to stick his fingers in his eyes before he choked him out. But here we go. Let's take a look at it real quick. All right, John. So what are you thinking about this?
Nothing yet. I mean,
what does it look like? What does it look like to you?
It looks like a pride fight, pretty much. It looks like, early pride. Vale Tudo, MMA. I think it's the same.
And do they allow that kind of hook kick that he's doing right now with the closed guard? Is that still allowed in MMA now?
I think they've taken it out and put it back in a couple times. They talk about it being a kidney thing, but then they realize you can punch there anyway. Why? So I think you can do it. It's just not as effective, But that's not a big deal. It's the stomps that are the biggest deal. The groin shots, but it's like I said, it's MMA. It's early, and there was other no holds barred fights. Remember, they would have the judo Gene LaBelle, do his. He would go in with his gi and do judo against a boxer. But he could punch too, so that seemed like it was kind of anything goes. And
they're not wearing any gloves. And I noticed that right now Zulu has his hand on his throat like this.
Yeah.
Is that allowed now?
Yeah, that's what is. Yeah, you just kind of move back, right?
Are you allowed to have the hand around the throat like that?
Yeah, you just take it off. Yeah, it's not like it's a big move.
Okay, so they allow that. I know in jiu-jitsu they don't.
No, why?
Jiu-jitsu. So you're not allowed to grab the throat. You can have the hand here, you can put pressure here, but if you grab the throat like a strangulation, like if you're trying to strangle the person, that's not allowed.
Well, strangling is one thing. Breaking if you go in looking for the trachea, you're not allowed to do that.
All right, but you're allowed to strangle.
Choke, you can choke from any position. I mean, if you can use your arm and like put the full choke on him with your arm, both arms, then I think one hand would be okay.
All right, so one hand. I know they have this thing called the roadhouse choke where you just put pressure down. But I know definitely both hand strangulation like this is not allowed. Is that allowed in jiu-jitsu? How about in MMA now? Both hand strangling, is that allowed?
How would you like? Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
Oh, I can't see me on this.
Oh, okay. All right.
But
Here.
like, what? I mean,
I'm,
you
I'm
think
gonna I'm gonna
based on
press I'm gonna press pause on the fight here and go back to our conversation.
like
All right.
this, you
Yeah,
think this is illegal,
I
but
don't know.
this
That,
is
that's what I'm asking
legal?
you. That's what I'm asking you. I don't know. That's why I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Is this legal? Can I grab someone by the throat like this? I know in jujitsu you can't. In
Why
jujitsu,
can't you?
you can't grab with both hands to the throat and like Boston Strangler style, like serial killer style strangle
I
someone.
think you're mixing up the two-handed choke versus the two-handed or even the one-handed trachea grab.
Okay. No, I'm asking. No,
Yeah, that's why you
I'm not
can't do it.
stating. I'm not stating anything. The only thing I'm stating is that specifically in jujitsu, the second someone sees you get both hands like this on anyone in any position, unless you're doing it to like change your position or something, they're not. They're gonna stop you right there and tell you it's not allowed. And make a. If you're doing it in practice, your coach is gonna freak out because I've had that happen a few times.
Huh.
But
That's weird.
so now, what do you think? So some people. Now I'm gonna be very specific. Rickson Gracie talks a lot about how the reason he did not fight in the UFC was because he felt in the early days that the UFC was split into rounds for more entertainment and wasn't actually simulating a real fight. And that's why he decided to go to Japan and help Japan start Pride. Um, and there's a lot of background there, money stuff between him and Hoyce, and he didn't like the deal he was getting. He was being offered at that time by the current people who were running the UFC, and he felt he'd get a better offer in Japan. And he started working with Japan promoters to start Pride. And he insisted when they wanted to bring in Pride, they wanted to make it more of a circus with turn it into like a pro wrestling thing. And he fought that and said, nope, I want it to be Vale Tudo. I want it to be Vale Tudo rules, which is why Pride, like you just mentioned, has a lot of stomping, has those rules. The ref won't get you up. And he argued a lot, saying that just doesn't represent the jujitsu that I practiced with Helio Gracie that was based in self-defense, and that UFC was more for a sport, and that the original jiu-jitsu was more for real fighting. That if they can get back up, you're no longer representing a real fight, and it's giving the other guy an advantage. What do you think of all that?
I think he could say that all he wants, but it's so boring when two people are just on the ground and one person is holding the other one down. Who's going to buy tickets anymore? Nobody. I mean, the crowd starts going crazy. They start booing. Nobody wants to watch one guy laying on top of another one unless there's action all the time. You're improving your position. You're striking. You're always attacking. But a lot of times when one guy's being very defensive from the bottom, the other guy doesn't want to lose position, it becomes boring to watch. So like if they were striking and they want to keep it really realistic, we're strikers, but they just kind of moved around each other. No one wanted to get knocked out, so they just kind of moved around the ring for 10 minutes. People would be booing. No one wants to watch it. It's the same thing. Whether it's striking or grappling, there has to be constant attacking because it's a sport. It's not a real fight. The whole thing that takes it out of the real fight is they can't gouge the eyes. You can't bite. So it's not a real fight. It's nothing like a real fight, right? It's as much of a real fight as you can make it without losing an eye or a chunk of skin. But that makes it not a real fight. So it's going to get boring if the striker doesn't want to strike or the grappler doesn't want to improve his position and attack. So yeah, I mean, it's like they got to sell the tickets. I mean, he could say he wants it like a real fight, no rounds, don't ever stand him up. Yeah, people will be standing up in the crowd leaving.
So Rickson argued that that's not the case. That the problem was that the UFC promoters didn't educate the fans enough. And the reason he was able to make $1.2 million fighting in Japan was because the Japanese fans were more open to watching a grappling match because they understood more of the rules of grappling, and they weren't into so much of the entertainment side of things as much as they were fans of a pure, real fight, quote unquote, Rickson Gracie in his book. What do you say about that?
That sounds great, but you have to sell tickets. It is a sport. It's entertainment, whether you like it or not. If you get in there, what if you went in there and you just hammered a nail into wood, and just say, well, they got to understand that I'm hammering nobody wants to watch it though. No one wants to watch one guy hold down the other, and that's not. I mean, it's in a street fight. Yeah, you could that could be, you don't care about entertaining. In this sport, you have to entertain. And do they entertain or educate? It's not about educate, it's boring. Just like you could educate a boxing fan that the foot movement and head movement is so important. They wouldn't let two guys just moving in their head and moving their feet around for 5 minutes straight. You can't educate your fans into liking something boring. I mean, it's boring to watch.
But in Japan, he was selling out stadiums. People were selling out stadiums in Japan watching that format. That was his argument. That's what the UFC promoter said at the time about Americans, and he said no. The Japanese
first of all,
were already taught that, and he was selling out stadiums.
What's the recidivism rate of the Japanese criminal? It's like 2%. In America, it's like 79%. It's a different demographic. Japanese people will sit there and watch it. When you walk into the cage or the ring in Japan in Pride, the crowd was silent. They're not silent here. They're screaming and yelling and stomping. It's a different demographic. It's a different crowd. They're going to get bored with it if the fights were on the ground rolling around. It's nothing to do with education. It has to do with entertainment. People want to be entertained. Nobody is entertained by watching two guys running around a ring, not punching, or rolling around on the mat, not submitting. It's just human nature. Japanese don't like it more or anything. That's maybe the Japanese culture. That's why when they sneeze, they put on a fucking mask for a week. It's because the Japanese culture is a lot different than the American culture. So yeah, he can make some money in Japan, but guess what? Where are they now?
And then he would argue that when he fought, there was over 30 million people that watched the fight live.
So where are they now? Where are they now?
So that was his argument.
It's evolved.
And then he argued that that's because the UFC bought out Pride, because they saw Pride as their number one competitor in MMA.
If Pride was making that much money, guess what? The UFC wouldn't have been able to buy them out. They bought them out because they were hurting.
And then he would argue that it's still not representative of a real fight.
Okay, but you take out the biting and the gouging, it's not even anything near a real fight. So unless you want to put those two things in, and a friend to jump in, it's not a real fight. It's nothing. It's as close to a real fight as you can get without gouging someone's eye out or biting their face off, but it's still not a real fight. So if you want a real fight, put those things in. Man, it will get exciting then.
And then he said that he would allow that in his Gracie challenges in his dojo, but that they wouldn't allow that for the actual competition. That was his argument. And then he would still argue that it's still closer to a real fight than what the UFC is currently doing today with 5-minute rounds.
Right, but people don't buy their tickets to say, I want to watch something like a real fight, but it's a lot more fucking boring. They want to watch entertainment. They want to watch guys like fucking, they want to watch like Gaethje and they want to watch Max Holloway. They want to watch exciting grapplers. They don't want to watch rolling around on the ground for 10 minutes. Hey, this is like a real fight, but everybody's falling asleep. You don't even know. Japanese fans are so quiet. Maybe they just fell asleep. I don't know. I'm just guessing. I'm not a. if they
I'm
want,
trying. I'm doing a horrible job of playing devil's advocate here.
because there's no argument for entertainment. You can't. MMA is entertainment. Pride used to be entertainment. MMA is entertainment, and you can't let people rolling on the ground without doing anything, or you got to stand them up. You want it to look like a real fight, it's going to get real nasty, ugly, bloody, losing eyes and shit, or else they're going to tone it way down and let them roll around on the ground for 10 minutes. And guess what? The real fight will look like a real fight, but you'll never get anybody wanting to fight anymore. And the rolling around on the ground, I don't care what demographics it is, it's not educational, it's just fucking boring. Right? I mean, it is, right?
So how about the argument then? So you're admitting that Vale Tudo is close to a real fight, but it's not the real fight because there's no biting. There's still no biting or eye poking. So to the opposite end of that, if you're training someone for real self-defense,
yeah,
would that pose the question that perhaps Vale Tudo rules are the best rules to practice to get close to real self-defense, and then simulate the eye gouging and biting to be able to continue? Would you argue that would work for Vale Tudo?
For a fight it would.
No, for training.
No, not if you're doing head stomps and stuff, because it might stimulate it, but then all the practitioners, since you get hit probably 100 times more in training than you do in the actual fight, then everybody will be punch drunk and nobody will ever be able to fight because they'll always be injured.
I can't find the video, but the second you said that, I just remembered an old video of you, Chuck, and maybe even Glover in a ring, and then someone was being kicked in the head while they were down. Why am I remembering this? What was that? What was that? There was like an old video, and there was like, it was an old promotion, and I'm pretty sure there was 2-on-1s going on that day too.
No.
What was that? What? Okay, what was that? Please break that down. Please break that down real quick. I don't know why I can't find the video. I'm sorry, everyone. John, you got to explain that.
That was our first black belt test.
All right. Can you run us through that real quick? As we're talking about Vale Tudo, simulating a real fight. Let's go there real quick.
When we do our black belt test, we're not trying to simulate a real fight. We're just giving someone, we're jumping them in or beating them in or whatever. We're not simulating a real fight. It is like a real fight in a lot of ways, but we're just trying to put somebody into a position where he's not going to get out of, because, short of biting or a knife, 3 guys on one guy, he's never going to win.
So go back though. Explain to everyone what happened at that test. And that's big disclaimer. He doesn't do this anymore. But what happened at that test? Because I remember I saw a video of it.
No, everybody was bleeding, including me. I don't remember, when Chuck went and somebody jumped in from behind and would tackle him, and then there was just punch on one. But then the other person, everybody was jumping in the Shark Tank, and then next guy would come in and everybody would jump on him and he'd try to defend himself, and we'd take him. Don't forget, we were taking him down. It was a wooden floor. It wasn't even a fucking ring. There were people getting pounded on that. In those early days, man, people were getting pounded. I'm so glad.
It looked like a gang initiation. Like, I thought I stumbled upon a gang initiation.
You got to remember, these were guys like, Chuck and Glover. I don't even know if Glover was in yet, but Eric Schwarz, the guy that beat Glover, he was in. There was some big ass fucking hard punching people in there, because I was in there getting punched a lot. It was just everybody's getting the shit kicked out of them, and it was a test. It was a black belt test.
All right. The big disclaimer: he doesn't do that anymore. That was a long time ago. But while we're talking about how close Vale Tudo can get to a real fight, I just want the viewers to know that John is not shy to try to make something look like a real fight. All right.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering, like we're trying to back out of a real fight here, yeah, there's no there are no qualms for that.
That if that looked like a real fight, it wasn't, but it was a fucking beating. So that's what it was. It was a real beating.
So, all right. Is there any final thoughts you want to close up on as far as Vale Tudo and your reaction to it and that set of rules?
Yeah, Valley. First of all, Vale Tudo is nothing like jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So it's a sport. It's not a martial art; it's a sport. But it's pretty martial arts like. So is MMA, and that's not a sport. That's not a martial art either. It's a sport. So is Muay Thai, but most people consider them martial arts because they are fighting. So they're sport martial arts. And the main difference in Vale Tudo and boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, whatever, is you can use a lot of it in the street, but its main goal is to win a fight, like sport. And you're not trying to hurt the other person. You sometimes do, but that's not your goal. Your goal is to beat them. So by beating them, you knock them unconscious or you choke them unconscious, and then you can win. But it's a sport, and there's a referee, and they tell you when enough is enough. They try to protect as much as they can when somebody's punching you in the fucking face over and over. So it's as close to a fight as they want to get it, but it's not a real fight. You know what I mean? MMA and Vale Tudo. It's as close as you can get, but it's still a sport that relies on entertaining, or else no one's going to buy tickets. And guess what? There'll be no more sport. So embrace the fact when they stand them up, and don't say, "Oh, it should be." The sport will go away if it gets boring. And you can talk about educated fans or whatever, but boring's boring. If you can educate the fans all you want, you put 1,000 people into a room, and one ring they're punching each other in the face, and one ring they're just rolling around. I'll bet you 99% of them are going to go watch the people punching each other in the face. That's human nature. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't make that. I just try to follow it.
All right. And then I guess I wanted to have, to be honest, I wanted to have Rickson on the show, and I contacted his marketing team, but I'm still waiting for a response. And maybe one day. I'm not making any promises here, but hey, I did try. Give me
a way to reach out. I'll reach out to him.
I will. I'm still looking for a valid avenue. I've tried like 3 different contacts. I'm waiting for one of them to see if one of them is real or not. But
I will text. I'll text someone and try to get him.
If I find a jiu-jitsu guy, because I'd love to have you talk to him. So since he's not here, the best I can do is do a quote. Rickson Gracie once said, "If I'm fighting a professional fight, I'll stop hitting you when the referee tells me to stop. But if you come to my gym and you fight me on my terms, I'll stop hitting you when I feel like it." Rickson Gracie. All right, this has been another episode of the Live Clean and Fight Dirty Show. Once a week. Hey, everyone, you have questions? Post them now. What were your reactions to Vale Tudo in sports and MMA? Put them in there. Next week, we'll go over it. I'll bring you right back into the show. You put your name in, and I will mention you on the show next week. Share with your friends. There are still spots available to train on the Pit.tv if you want to train with UFC Coach John Hackleman, earn a black belt, open a school even. All the steps are right there. If you're still wondering, hey, I don't know if I want to do this, for less than $24.97.
No, it's $19.97.
$19.97 for $19.97. He's getting cheaper.
How am I paying my mortgage this month?
I don't know how you're gonna pay your mortgage. For less than $20, you can train. Not even, this isn't a sample trial class. I tried an awesome trial class the other day. They gave me like 3 lessons for free, and then immediately asked me to sign up. I didn't get more than one workout for one day. We're talking about the entire thing for an entire month, so you can actually get there and try it out. Can't lose. You can't lose. Can't lose. Don't let anyone take your lunch money. See y'all next week.